So we're here to solve this Yajilin puzzle by Ashish Kumar. It has an even rows and columns constraint, which is one we'll actually probably use a lot as we get through the solve. One thing I'm noting as we begin is there's an easy start with this 2 right clue, and it also looks like there's a pretty easy start with this 2 down clue. And this is the one that's probably more subtle if you haven't solved a lot of Yajilin puzzles. First, these cells are just off a corner, will always have to be unused, and that means that where the 2 blackened cells will go are these spaces. But there's a more general rule in Yajilin that when you're one away from a border, you actually can't have these cells be one apart. One reason for that is that you'll end up getting a path that's going through them, as well as paths that go to the side of them around. You'll always form a 3-way junction if you put these cells just one away. So I would quickly know that these are the paths that are shaded, but let's just go through a different way if you're just thinking of other ways to see these puzzles. One way to think about it for first is this bottom cell, it can't be the one that's used here because it will lead to this isolated path where it pushes this cell in. And so for sure this top one is part of the Yajilin shading pattern. And then we come to this stage where we will end up finding, if you now sort of look exactly here, you'll see if you make this end sort of go, but we come back to the fact that we learned that pattern again, the 2 cells away for shadings that are one off of an edge is key. So I get to this stage of the puzzle, these bottom rows, I've got 3 shaded, so I need to get a 4th. I've got none shaded, I can't put one in because I get an odd number in that row, so it looks like these constraints are working pretty well. As I come up this leftmost column, I see the even rows and columns constraint come in again. One thing I can mark here with this 1-up arrow, there's one of these cells will be filled, but that means this one is not, so the total count here is just 2. I've got to put one more shaded cell in this row somewhere. These are the 3 options for it. Notice that this one quickly dies because it's going to isolate a cell, so it's going to be one of these 2. And one of the things that I track in puzzles like this is where I'm going to put in a shading cell, but then force a lot of the loop to draw next to it. And so here we again are going to force a few issues. First, the loop will close here, but we make these isolated paths. And we also get the second junction up there. And so it looks like this is the only cell that can be shaded for the loop in the section. We get something like this to go. This cell now has to be unshaded so that it fulfills the rules for the row. And we get this pattern. We're going to have a star of the grid coming up here. This rightmost column has an even satisfaction. This is also even right now, so these all look good. There is stuff I can do here, like all of these have to be left unshaded, that I couldn't put 2 in. These 2 cells would be the ones you put in without isolating bits. But I'm seeing actually what looks to be a pretty cool deduction in the second column. Right now I have 2 shaded cells, so my goal is going to be to have 2 or to have 4 in this space. And is it possible to have 2? If I have 2, that means the loop is filling both of these spaces, and the loop can't do that. So where you could see that one of these cells for sure is shaded, the even column constraint forces both to be shaded. And so I get this quickly. This up here, the loop continues cornering to use these empty cells. The cell has to be part of the loop. I now see these 2 loop ends are going to come together if I take that space, so this is unused, and that's now 2 in this column, so the remaining one is part of the loop. This column here has all the cells but one taken, and now we look at the rows. This is an even row, and this is the last cell that would fulfill this and fulfill this to make it an even space, and now we just need to avoid the loop ends. So we got through this puzzle, not too challenging to start out the week, but it did use a pattern that if you haven't seen it before in Yajilin is a key one. It's this concept that when you're shading multiple cells near an edge of the border, that you'll have to have them be at least 2 cells separated so you don't form a 3-way junction. Again, if you put something in like this, you'd form this sort of pattern, and this cell right here is very problematic. So I hope you learned something about this Yajilin puzzle, and we'll see you again soon.